We're now joined by Katie Brennan. Her Chiron may say former campaign volunteer for Phil Murphy for governor, but you know Katie's name, you know her likeness. She's been out there publicly fighting on behalf of victims of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual violence. She went public in late 2018 when she accused Al Alvarez, who was a Murphy campaign aide, of raping her after a campaign gathering in 2017 when she was a volunteer. Katie, beyond all the publicity, beyond the case, beyond the fact that $600,000 of that settlement that was reached with you donated to what organization and why? Let's get that out of the way first.
Sure. It's the Waterfront Project. You can visit them at thewaterfrontproject.org. They are a nonprofit organization that I'm on the board of here in Hudson County. They provide legal services as well as housing counseling to low-income people around Hudson County. And because of everything that I went through, in particular with the legal system, I knew that I, as a very privileged white married woman who struggled so much to access those resources, it's got to be even worse for everybody else. And so I felt very strongly about creating that opportunity for others.
Thank you for sharing that, Katie. Katie, what is, and there's a whole range of legislative efforts, reform, if you will, but without going into the details of the legislation, into the weeds, as they say in politics and government, what is the core, in your view, of those reform efforts, A, and B, what progress have we made? Or not?
We've made a ton of progress. If I can go a little bit out of order, I think that sometimes when people talk about the Me Too movement or other things, it's too easy to focus on an individual, myself, another, a face that was in the paper as a flash in the pan. But behind all of that, there's been an enormous amount of hard work and kind of the deep, it's not glitzy, it's not glamorous behind the scenes work, and it really is a movement. So I'm confident in the progress that we've made, but do know that there is so much more to be done. The core of the reforms, when I started out, when I came forward in 2018, that first Wall Street Journal article, it was about prosecutorial reforms, because at that point, that's what I had experienced. Again, I knew that myself, with so many resources and so much access, I knew that these crimes are underreported, under-arrested, under-convicted, and still yet I thought that it was important to try. And so when the prosecutorial case didn't move forward, and I learned firsthand about all the different barriers to receiving justice in these instances, I felt the need to discuss what potential reforms are. How do we change this? And so if you look at that article, it was about what people are doing across the country. It was subsequent to that article, which in hindsight seems naive, but I had no idea the can of worms that it would open with the legislative hearings and everything else, that I really learned a lot more about employment practices, employment reforms, campaign reforms. And so where did all these reforms, these pieces of legislation come from? It very much came from my direct personal experience. And then as I went forward, I learned that so many others shared my same experiences, whether it be the criminal justice system, workplace violence, or politics and campaigns.
And by the way, that package of bills, some of those bills have passed, some of them are still languishing in the legislature. But I want to ask you this, Katie. For those who argue that, quote, the Me Too movement has gone too far, right? You say what to them? And they do. And mostly men, but some women. Come on, the pendulum, they're about this pendulum thing.
Yeah.
As if we're done with that, now let's get back to normal, whatever that means.
Right, and I would say it's not based on facts. Look at the facts. One of the bills that we had to pass was about looking at the actual data in prosecutorial cases around sex crimes. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we know that you get your car stolen, you're likely to tell your friends, like, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened to me. Not so in these cases. There's so much shame around it. It is underreported, it is under-arrested, it is under-convicted at grossly disproportionate rates. And so that's that's one side of things. But of course, I'm not on some journey to make sure that more people are in jail. That couldn't be further from the truth. But of course, we want it prevented in the first place. But there is a lot of shame around this. When there was the investigations in the newspaper about misogyny in politics, when there were the studies, when there was the people who said, no, I would never report it because look what happened to Katie. What I say to that is I have not regretted it for a moment.
You don't.
No, it has been deeply trying and difficult. And at this point, so much more of it has been about the trauma after the fact and going public and going through the process and having that doubt. But it has not gone too far because at the end of the day, there's still so little accountability. There's so many people that are more on my side of things where they decide it's easier to leave, or they're not going to get justice, or it's too painful to stay in their job. And until we can take accountability and admit wrongdoing, which is frankly what I thought would happen right from the get-go, and to this day has not, I don't think it's gone too far.
How would you assess, and forget about the campaign, forget about the election on November the 2nd. This will be seen later. Whoever wins, that's another story. What would you say, or how would you assess Governor Murphy's, quote, handling of your case, your situation, not legally, but as a leader?
When I came forward and in the Wall Street Journal to discuss those prosecutorial reforms, at the time, I truly believed that there was not a political aspect to it because I didn't know. I didn't know everything that had happened behind the scenes. I didn't know the other side of those conversations that I had had with his leadership team. I didn't know everything that had gone on in the background. But I'll say again that what so many are asking for, whether it be this or in the Me Too movement more generally, is, do you know how to apologize?
Did the governor ever apologize to you?
If you're not holding your own team accountable, if you are not recognizing that the folks around you may or may not represent the state of New Jersey, or that they can't say, this is where I failed and we're going to do more, then I don't know that you have apologized.
Katie, we thank you not only for being with us, but way more importantly, for the work that you are doing with so many others. The work continues. Your voice is important. And we wish you and your family all the best. And thank you for joining us on Public Broadcasting.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm Steve Adubato. That is Katie Brennan. And we appreciate you watching us. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Holy Name, Valley Bank, NJM Insurance Group, Berkeley College, Operating Engineers, Local 825, Fedway Associates, Inc., PSE&G, IBEW Local 102, and by Community Food Bank of New Jersey. Promotional support provided by NJ.com and by ROINJ.
Data shows that many patients have avoided seeking critical health care in the wake of COVID-19 for fear of contracting the virus. Delaying medical care can have serious consequences, so you should never second guess or ignore your symptoms. At Holy Name Medical Center, we have measures in place to prevent infectious disease from spreading. We're clean, we're open, and we're safe for all your healthcare needs.